back to quilting with me, Steph Walker, otherwise known as Stitch It Mama. Today we are going to be looking at one of my favourite quilting techniques, the big stitch quilting method. Now this is a beautiful and very versatile way of quilting your projects. And believe me, there are several different techniques and several different tools. I'm going to show you today just a few of the tools that I find really useful and a couple of techniques that you might want to try if you're giving this method a go. Now, you've finished your EPP project or you've machine pieced a beautiful quilt. What do you do now? Well, now is the point where we want to think about our wadding or batting and our backing. And depending on your project, there's a few different options available. Now, if you're doing something as simple as a mug rug, a wall hanging, a table runner, you're going to want to look at something a little bit thinner, not too heavy, when you're going to be sort of thinking about quilting it. So I personally use a kind of polyester synthetic wadding. It's cheap, it's very easily available, and it comes in a variety of weights. You'll see these being sold by the ounce. The lower the ounce, the thinner it is. So for example, what I quite often use for things like my wall hangings and my mug rugs is this. It's a 2 ounce polyester wadding, or batting as some people call it. Very thin, very, very light, because if you're using these things like table runners and stuff, you're going to be putting things on top of them. They're going to get you don't want too much puffiness or too much definition in your quilting. You just want it to be nice and light and thin. So this is really perfect for that. Obviously, you know, it is very, very cheap, readily available. There is a chance that obviously with continued washing it may degrade, but it's real easy to pick up. If you're looking more in the terms of an actual quilt, you're going to want something a little bit thicker. So for example, you might go for a 6, or I think this is an 8 ounce one right here. They sell them in big bundles like this, so it's a little bit thicker. For the smitten right behind me, I decided I wanted that one to be a winter quilt, so I went ahead and picked up a super thick 14 ounce. Very, very thick, but so warm and snuggly. And you probably can't see it on the camera, but I have actually already started to hand quilt the smitten, and it gives, when you do quilt it, it gives these big, beautiful defined bits when you do your quilting. I'm actually really enjoying seeing how amazing that's coming out. There is also lots of other options. There are full cotton options. There is something amazing called Quilter's Dream, which feels amazing. Literally, just please go into a shop and have a feel, because it's incredible. It's not too thick, but it's really kind of snuggly, and you know it's going to be really warm, and it's really, really nice to sew. Bit more expensive, however, which is why I don't have as much of it, because it's just when you do a lot of quilting projects, slightly less cost effective. What I do really recommend, these are all personal preference as always, so please go into your local hobby shop, your haberdashery, wherever you get all of these things. Ask them about the battings and the waddings that are available and have a feel. Feel is really important. You can give them a good squish, have a feel of them, see what you think works best for your project. So once we have that bit sorted, we're gonna end up basting our quilt project onto it. That's something I'm going to cover in a completely different video, so I'm not going to go over that heavily today. So whether you have thread basted or use pins or safety pins, we're not going to worry about that right now, but it's going to be basted on. So here comes the point already of kind of diversion. Lots of people who do hand quilting techniques will have already put on the backing, which is a fabric that goes on the back of your project, and will have already bound sometimes the project before they even start the quilting. There is a way that I'm going to show you in a minute called popping your knot, which means that your knot doesn't get shown on the back and you can still see your stitches, and actually the back then gets quilted too. I personally don't like doing that. I don't like seeing my stitches on the back. I don't enjoy constantly popping my knot. I find it really frustrating and irritating. So me personally, I quilt through the batting and the main bit, and then at the end I add my fabric and binding completely separately, so all stitches are hidden and the back is plain. Entirely personal preference. So we have I'm going to work on this log cabin hexagon piece, which I'm going to quilt and turn into a mug rug. So I'm going to get this wadded up and ready to stitch with you. Let's head over to the work table. Okay, welcome to the work table. So we're going to start off by having a quick look at a few different examples of big stitch quilting. Now, big stitch quilting is called that because, as you might imagine, the stitches are much bigger than we would normally see in quilting, and therefore we almost kind of make it a feature of our actual piece at the same time. Now, just because it's called big stitch quilting doesn't mean it has to be huge, great stitches. And in fact, really, they don't even really need to be that big at all. It is entirely up to you about how you want your project to look and what you want to do. So I have a variety of different stitch lengths depending on the project that I've been working on. For example, this is my little pumpkin wall hanging that I made recently because it's getting autumnal. And you can see that my stitches are quite big on this one. I've also used contrasting colours to try and make them a little bit more of a feature so you can see them. In fact, in this I've also included a little bit of embroidery too. On this, which is another kind of hexagon mug rug like we're going to work on in a little while, I've used some relatively biggish stitches, so they are kind of a feature. In some cases I've tried to choose colours which blend a little bit so they don't pop too much, but you can definitely see the stitches there. On that one, and this one is a project that I'm working on for my niece actually, a wall hanging. And on this one, instead of, like, for example, these ones, I suppose I've been a little bit more like trying to follow the lines. You can see I've followed the lines around this one, and this one I've gone a little bit more artistic. This one I've decided to go full out for a complete design for the quilting using these circles, and if you take a look you can see that my stitches are big but not too big. They're still kind of neat and tidy. You can see a little bit of my marking underneath there too. When that goes away it'll look a bit better. In terms of thinking about what pattern you want to do, there's so many options, as with everything. You can follow the lines and just kind of pick out various features. You can do straight across cross hatching, or you can go for an actual pattern. Now you can even buy templates for these patterns, but most of them are quite easy to hand draw out yourself. So for example, this one, I decided to go with kind of like, well, they were kind of concentric circles, but I only wanted the edges of them for the white, and then I wanted to kind of follow the lines of what would be, I suppose, traditional kind of pumpkin lines on the inside of the pumpkin on this one. And this one I went for a pattern. Now I didn't buy a pre-made template for this. What I actually did was I cut out some little circles, and I folded one in half and then half again. I used that as kind of a baseline, and then on the card ones I then drew where those lines were, and then I popped it on here like this. So I started at the corner, I drew my first one, and then when I made my next one, I lined up where the edges of the previous circle were, and then I drew my next one, and I went along and along and along and up and up and up, and it built up into this beautiful pattern. Take a look at online. You can find some, like I said, pre-made templates, which are really great. They're kind of plastic and they've got bits cut out of them, so you can just lay them on, draw in the grooves, and it marks out on your template. Now, marking your patterns out, there are a few different options. You can use one of these. This is one where you don't leave any actual marks. It actually just, you press down and it just kind of makes a little crease, I guess, in your fabric, which then you can press out later. The advantage of that is that it does not leave behind any markings at all. It can be a little bit tricky to work with. I sometimes find that it's a bit difficult, especially when we're coming to curves, but it's a really good option as a quilting marking tool. and super kind of easy, cheap, nothing to worry about. Something I use a lot of is these are friction pens. They're actually not designed for fabric. I think it was an unintentional byproduct, but it's basically a pen that you write on paper with. So you can write on paper like this, and then you use the little rubber tip at the end to generate friction and heat to rub it away. And you could also press this with an iron to get rid of the markings. Now this is something that I use all the time for my, you can get them in loads and loads of colours. I was recently alerted to the fact that in kind of cold, very, very, very cold temperatures, the lines can come back. And on certain fabrics, they can do what we call ghosting, which is where you can just see the markings a little bit. In my experience, none of my projects have experienced that coming back yet. However, if you're doing a wall hanging where it's going to go on a really particular cold wall, you might want to be a bit more careful about that. There are also amazing chalk pens, fabric pencils, air and water soluble pens available, which are amazing. At the moment, these just happen to be my personal preference, so I don't have any of those, but it's worth looking up fabric marking pens and seeing which ones you think might work for you. So I've decided with this one, this is one of my hexagon log cabin mug rugs. I have basted it and I'm using the thin wadding, and I've decided that I'm just going to follow the lines on this one. I'm not going to do a straight all over pattern, just going to follow the lines around it. So one thing that I am going to use is a hoop. Now I don't actually have a quilter's hoop. Actual quilters hoops are kind of thicker and they have a much bigger bolt on the top here so that it can withstand lots of thick layers. I have actually struggled to get hold of one of those here in the UK. So I'm using just an embroidery and a plain old embroidery hoop. You don't need one of these. I personally just find that they are very, very helpful for keeping my fabric stable and in one place. And also it's just more comfortable to hold on to. You don't want it super tight. There still needs to be a bit of play in there, but it's just more comfortable for me. Again, it's trial and error. See what you feel and think works best for you. So I'm hooped up and ready to go, but what am I going to use? So there are, again, a wide variety of options, starting out with your very basic cotton. So I've used basic cotton on the pumpkin. And I decided to use this basic white in the middle, and I used a basic orange on the outside. Very cheap, basic cotton thread or polyester thread. It's okay to work with, but I think if you're working exclusively on quilting, maybe it might be worth spending some money and getting something that's a little bit more that's got kind of a better reputation for holding, because it does snap. I think you're pulling this thread through multiple times. So something like a 50 weight cotton would be a really good idea. Next thing you can also use is this cotton. I think it's pronounced pearl. It's actually spelled, I don't know if you can see that there, look. Pearl. I've got a very light cotton pearl that I really like to use. You can get this in different thicknesses and weights as well, up to really, really thick. I actually really like to use the very, very light thin one, and it's a really beautiful thing to stitch with. It does get a little bit tangled, so just be aware. You could also use embroidery thread, embroidery silks. Now this is something that I do actually use a lot of. I know lots and lots of quilters do not like using this. I personally really like it. It's cheap. It comes in a wide variety of colours and textures actually. So I'm actually using on this one, I'm using it's a satin embroidery thread. So it is really shiny and it's got a beautiful kind of sheen and finish to it. It is super, super prone to tangling, however, which does make my life a nightmare, but I'm willing to deal with that for the sake of how beautiful it looks. It is entirely personal preference, and it might be worth picking up a few different things to see what you prefer to use. And again, I think it's also down to project. So, you know, one project might not, you know, might call for something completely different. Like I said, my pumpkin I felt was better with the plain cotton sewing thread. You know, something else, I might go with something different. I'm actually going to go with the cotton pearl for this in this instance. And then our next thing we need is our needles. I personally love John James needles. They are my absolute favorites, and they sell them in these cute little they're called pebbles, and you can buy specific quilting pebble, and it means that you have a variety of sizes and eye sizes as well, and different thicknesses all in one safe space, and you can store them all in here. I love this. This is brilliant. It's one of my favorite things ever. My last thing that we use as an absolute must is a thimble. Please, please, please buy yourself a thimble if you are hand quilting. You are going to end up with holes in your fingers. Believe me. Find yourself a really nice thimble that fits nicely. This is my absolute favorite. This is a Prim Ergonomic. It's kind of silicone around here. It's a really comfortable fit. They do them in lots of different sizes, and it has these deep little ridges that you can put your needle in and push it through. Something that I don't yet have that is en route is something called a thimblet, which is like a little silicone sticky that you put on your other finger to protect it, because what you might find, which I'm going to show you in a minute, when you're quilting, you're pushing through from this side, but you're actually feeling with this finger on this side, and you're going to get stabbed a whole bunch of times. This finger is usually I can barely feel anything in this finger now because I've stabbed it so many times. I don't have them with me right now, but I highly recommend them. I've run out. I need more. And you can reuse them multiple times actually. I think one of them I reused like 4 or 5 times. You just kind of peel it off and stick it back onto a little piece of paper. Seriously, look them up. Thimble dots is another one, I think they're called. Sometimes they're like little leather patches, but they just stick on your finger, and they just kind of help to save that finger that's on the back here. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to be using the cotton pearl for this. I'm going to pull out one of my needles and thread up. Now, because some people will just want to have their backing on already. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Some people already have their backing on. I know that's not how I work, but I am going to show you what to do if you do already have your backing on there, so that you can do what we call pop your knot, so that although you'll see your stitches on the back, you will not see your knot on the back, okay, because that's not what you want. You do not want to see a big bunch of knots. And when it comes to this, because you're going to be doing quite a lot of sewing, lots of people are very tempted to pull off a whole ream of thread and then it gets tangled, it splits. Please don't do that. Not only that, you're really messing up your shoulder because you're doing these big, great big stitches, and you're not going to be as accurate either, okay? What you want to do, okay, is you want to so I would hold the needle like this, okay, and I measure out to just beyond my forearm, so about there, and that's where I cut it, okay? Yes, it might seem like you're going to have to change your thread more often, but you know what, actually you're going to save time because you're not going to be untangling, you're not going to be rethreading because your thread has snapped, and you're going to be doing your body a huge favor by not making enormous, elaborate, kind of big motions with your stitches, okay? So a forearm's width is all you need, okay? I do not want to see anyone doing anything longer than that, okay? All right. So I'm going to show you on this side how to pop your knot as if it was a backing, okay? So we just imagine that this is my back right now, okay? And I want to start my project, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is, obviously, I'm going to put my point through, okay? When it gets to this point, if this is my back and I've got my my backing fabric on, I'm not going to want to see that knot, am I? Take a look at that. Ugh, ugly, no, okay? I'm going to want to get rid of that, okay? So we're going to do something called popping your knot. Now, this needs practice, okay? You are actually going to pull that knot through the top layer of fabric only, okay? So through your backing only, okay? You do not want to pull it through completely, so you kind of have to control how you're going to do this, okay? And it does make a little pop sound. Are you ready? You hear that? That was a little pop. Okay, now mine has come out because I've pulled it too hard, okay? And also because there's nothing on the back, okay? But what you would do is you would pop that through. I'll show you again, okay? Okay, so we're going to go like this. Okay, we're literally just going to pull it so it pops through that fabric, okay? Pop. There we go. Oh, stayed in that time, okay? And then what you do is you just kind of give it a little bit of a rub with your nail or your finger. It helps. That will mean that the weave will close and the hole will disappear, but also it will help to bury that knot. Like, give it a rub both sides. It will help to bury that knot into the wadding and it'll stay there. And then you've got no knot, okay? And you do the same again at the end, okay? So at the end, I'll show you how to finish as well. So when you've finished and you want to change threads or you're finished, okay? You're going to have your knot. So imagine I've done a couple of stitches and I'm going to come this way. Now my knot, I don't want to see that knot, do I? Okay. So what you actually want to do, hang on, we can always pull them out, can't we? Okay, let's put in a couple of stitches. So let's imagine I need to finish, okay? So I'm going to put this in up here. Okay. Sometimes it gets stuck like that. Okay. Now I'm going to do a quilter's knot. Okay, so I'm going to put that through here. I'm going to keep that open and I'm going to pull that so that that thread is going to finish right on there. I'm going to put my thumb on it so it stays really close. Can you see how I've got that knot real tight to there? What I'm then going to do is I'm going to make a stitch and I'm going to try and go in where that is, if I can. It's much harder to do this on camera, guys. When you're not doing this on camera, it's so much easier. You can just see what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going in where that knot is. I'm coming up further away. It doesn't matter where because, you know, you're not gonna see it later. Okay, there we go. This is another way of popping your knot on the top, okay? So we're gonna gently pull, pop. Did you hear the pop? Okay, and it's gone. I'm gonna rub it to make sure that it's nice and buried and that hole's disappeared and that hole's gone. And now I can just literally, so I pull this slightly up like that so it comes through a little bit, trim it, and that's gone too. Now that's not generally how I do mine because I don't faff with having the backing fabric on the back. Honestly, I would just much rather do mine straight through the wadding and the fabric only, because then also if I do mess up any stitches and it gets tangled and I don't realise until later, then I haven't got a whole bunch of fixing to do. I'm just going to pull these ones that we did out for now. There we go. We don't need those. So I personally will stitch straight through the wadding and the top layer of my fabric and add mine separately. So for this, I decided that I'm going to go around. So I'm literally just going to come up, maybe not too close to the edges of the piecing, okay? Generally, it's just a basic running stitch. So we're just going to running stitch across. It's entirely up to you how big you want the stitches to be. I like mine to be kind of just about, you'll find yourself becoming quite consistent quite quickly, but generally kind of about that size, if that makes sense. And you want to try and make them as even as possible. So try and make sure that the distance between your stitches is the same length as your actual stitches themselves. Okay, and you want to keep it nice and consistent because you don't want to see a whole bunch of, like, it would look really awful right now if I had a really tiny little stitch and then a massive stitch. They want to be nice and consistent. Now, as you can see, I'm kind of sewing as I would normally, just kind of in and out and under. I put my hand under and I pull it out. So I'm still kind of feeling underneath with this finger, just so I can feel it come through, but I'm still kind of swapping around a lot. One method that lots and lots of quilters like to use is called rocking. It's not something I like to use, but I will show you how it works. And this is one where you definitely need one of those thimblets on this end, okay? So you're going to want to put your needle in, okay? right here. Okay, and you're going to want to slot it into one of your little holes on your, this is where your thimble comes in really, really handy, okay? And you're almost going to kind of angle it. So you're going to put that in until you feel it hit that finger on the back. You're going to angle it up because that way you know it's gone through all the layers, okay? And then you're going to push it up. Now, as you can see, mine's gone really far away. I'm not actually good at this method at all, so I'm going to just pull it out and try again. And actually, I find a hoop kind of hinders this, so I'm going to remove it. There we go. It's not something that I feel very comfortable with. I guess it takes practice. I have tried it several times. Some quilters just absolutely swear by it. It's not for me though, okay? So there we go. I'll pop that like in there. I can feel it on the other side, so I know it's gone through all my layers. And I'm gonna, there we go, then rock it back, okay? This is called a single loaded needle when you're doing one stitch, okay? Lots of people like to double load their needle or triple load, which means I'm gonna go back in again, up, gonna feel through, out, yep, there it is, it's through, and I'm gonna rock it back, load it up, okay? That's a double load, and some people will even go as far as a triple load, so I'm gonna go up again. Oh, there it is, yep, feel it in my finger, and I'm gonna bring it back on up and then push through. And it means you have a whole bunch of stitches, and it's interesting because they do look different. Don't know if you can see, these are the ones that I did via the rocking method, and these are the ones that I did my normal kind of regular running stitch sewing way. They look a little bit different, and I find they actually quilt up a little bit different. I actually find that I don't like the way that this comes out. I prefer this way. But it's worth trying and seeing if you feel comfortable with it. It's probably, especially if you're thinking about kind of triple loading your needle every time, you're going to get through a project really quickly because, you know, you're going to kind of do multiple stitches in one go. And I know you do get quite a big rhythm up with rocking. For me, I don't like it. But, you know, personal preference. And I do really, really recommend that you try different things. It might be worth making almost like a little sampler, like a basic project up, like maybe like a mug rug or a small wall quilt, and trying out a few different versions, a few different techniques, you know. Maybe have it so that you do a few stitches in different kinds of threads, and see what feels most comfortable for you and see what you think works best for your project. It really is quite a simple but effective way of quilting your projects. And I just think it's really quite charming. I think, you know, we've worked, whether you've done it by English paper piecing and hand stitching or on the machine, these are handmade items that you've worked really hard on. So, you know, I don't see any reason why, you know, seeing these big beautiful stitches would be a problem. Some people don't like that. Some people think it's amazing. I'm one of those people that thinks it's amazing. So please do give that a try. You can do all sorts of amazing, beautiful things with this big stitch quilting. Whether you hide your stitches by matching the colour or making them more obvious and making them a feature of your quilting, I think that you'll find it's quite a freeing method. If you're like me, I'm an absolute perfectionist, and I found this just very freeing. It was just really kind of easy, comfortable, and it was okay that my stitches were showing, and I found that really great. So hey, go ahead, give it a try and see what you think. I'm sure you'll be in love with it in moments. Thank you for joining us today to have a look at this big stitch quilting technique. I really hope you're ready to pick up a needle and thread and give it a try. It's definitely seeing a big revival in the quilting world, and you can see why. It's versatile, it's beautiful, and it has so much charm. It really has some great ways to make your quilting projects pop. If you would like to see more content from us, you can subscribe to the channel. You can like the video. Feel free to share it with all your friends and family. You can even leave us a comment on here. Don't forget, we would love to see how your progress is going. We'd love to see if you give this a try. You can head over to our Instagram @StitchItMama, all one word, and feel free to tag us in some projects. We'd love to see how you get on. I hope that you are all staying safe and taking care of each other, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Bye!